The cruelest betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the ones who called you dad. The house smelled like rosemary and baked ham. Laughter echoed from the dining room, but none of it reached me. I stood there with the salad bowl in my hands, ignored, invisible. "Just put it over there, Dad," Emily mumbled without even turning around. She was busy folding napkins into swans like it was a dinner for royalty. I cleared my throat. Where am I sitting? No answer. I looked around the table, 10 chairs, not one at the head, not one with my name. Mark, her husband, was pouring wine like he owned the place. My own grandkids barely looked up from their phones. "Emily," I asked again, a little louder this time. She snapped her head toward me. "What?" I said, "Where am I sitting?" A beat of silence. She blinked. "Then maybe you should just stand or sit on the couch. There's no room." I set the salad down. My hands trembled. "No room," I repeated, quieter this time. Mark chuckled under his breath. "We didn't think you'd mind, Pops. It's just easier this way." I turned to Emily. "You didn't think I'd mind not having a seat at my own family's Thanksgiving." She rolled her eyes. "Here we go, Dad, it's not a big deal, don't make it one." "No," I said, voice rising. "You've made it one, all of you." I looked around. No one met my eyes. I took one breath, too. "You know what? I've had enough," I said, grabbing my coat from the back of the chair. Emily's voice shot through the room. "If you're gonna make this a scene, then just leave." I stopped. Her face was twisted, jaw clenched. "Get out," she said louder. "Just go." The room froze. Even the kids looked up now. And that was it. That was the bullet. The one that didn't leave a wound you could see. I walked to the door. No one followed. No one tried to stop me. The cold hit me like a slap. I hadn't zipped my coat, didn't even grab gloves. I didn't feel the frost. My blood was boiling. The drive home was silent. The roads empty. The wheel felt foreign in my hands. 40 years of hard labor, 50-hour weeks, paid off my mortgage by 60. Built a trust worth $7.5 million meant for Emily and her kids, for their future, their security, their peace. Peace I never got. I pulled into the driveway, killed the engine, and sat there. The porch light blinked like it was trying to decide whether I was worth illuminating. Inside, the house felt colder than the street. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need to. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the empty chair across from me. It used to be hers, my wife's. She would have carved the turkey, told jokes, lit candles even when we were eating pizza. She made things warm. She'd be disgusted if she saw what today looked like. I let my head fall into my hands. "Get out," Emily had said. I built the roof over her head, paid for her college, helped her buy that house, funded the down payment, took care of her when Mark got laid off, picked up her kids from school when they were too busy. And today, I was treated like an obligation. No, not even that. I was treated like a ghost. I walked to the safe behind the cabinet, entered the code, click. Inside, the deed to the house, my wife's will, medical records, life insurance, and the trust agreement. I stared at it. Revocable. Until death or declaration otherwise. They didn't even know. They thought it was already theirs, that I was just a placeholder, a nuisance, an old man taking up space. I ran my fingers over the paper. My name, her name, my wife's signature, her tiny handwriting in the margin. "Let's give them more than money. Let's give them grace." I traced that word grace and felt a bitterness rise in my throat. They didn't want grace. They wanted control. If someone's listening, don't let silence swallow your story. Don't wait until you're screaming into the dark. I closed the safe slowly. Tonight wasn't the end. It was the beginning. I looked at the empty chair again. Maybe I wasn't building their future. Maybe I was building their prison. Sometimes the loudest betrayal is silence. No call, No apology, just absence where love used to live. The next morning, the sun poured in like it always did, indifferent to what happened the night before. The table still had two chairs. One of them hadn't been touched since my wife passed. The other, mine, still warm from where I sat and bled last night. The phone didn't ring. No text, no knock at the door. Just the tick of that old wall clock and the whistle of November wind rattling the window pane. I poured myself coffee I didn't want, let it sit until it went cold. I couldn't stop replaying her voice, Emily's voice, slicing through the warmth of that Thanksgiving room. Get out. Her eyes didn't blink when she said it. I wanted to believe she was just angry, that she'd regret it, that I'd hear a knock at the door and she'd be there with a pie or a tear or anything human. But nothing came. By the afternoon, I was still sitting at that table, staring at the empty chair across from me, the one that used to belong to Marion. She never missed a Thanksgiving. She made sure of that, even when the cancer had started taking pieces of her. She'd still hum while basting the turkey. She'd still kiss the top of my head and say, "Family's only family if we keep showing up." I had shown up. They hadn't. The screen door creaked and slammed. Greg didn't knock. He never did. Just strolled in with 2 cups of gas station coffee. "Brought the real stuff," he said, setting one down in front of me. I didn't say anything, just nodded. He looked at me for a long moment, his jaw tightened. "What happened?" I sipped bitter, burnt, still better than the cold silence in my chest. "Thanksgiving," I said quietly. "That bad?" She told me to get out. Greg's mouth didn't move for a few seconds. Then he blew out a slow breath. "You know," he said, leaning back in the chair, "they forgot who the hell you are." I met his eyes. He continued, "They forgot you were the guy who slept in trenches for their freedom, who worked graveyard shifts, who didn't miss a single tuition payment. You're not just some old man in a corner. You're the damn architect of their lives." I stared down into my coffee. My hands were steady now, calmer. Greg stood, clapped a heavy hand on my shoulder. "They'll remember, one way or another." And just like that he left. No long speeches, just truth dropped like a hammer. That night I opened the fireproof safe. I hadn't touched it since Marion's funeral. The hinge groaned like it resented being opened again. Inside were the bones of our entire life. The deed to this house, signed in blue ink and sweat. Life insurance papers. My military discharge certificate. Bank statements stacked in rubber bands. And at the very bottom, the trust agreement. $7.5 million. Set aside for Emily and the grandkids. Set aside for a legacy I thought I was proud of. I unfolded the pages. The corners had curled, the ink had faded slightly. And there it was. A line I'd almost forgotten, written in Marion's hand, underlined in red. "This trust is revocable at any time prior to the grantor's passing." My heart kicked hard against my ribs. I read it again and again. It wasn't theirs. Not yet. Every penny, every stock, every asset still mine. I wasn't a ghost. I was the gatekeeper. People who erase you forget you hold the pen. And now, I'm rewriting everything. I placed the papers back, carefully this time. Not with grief, but with purpose. I locked the safe, stood up and walked to the window. Snow had started to fall, light, slow, silent. But beneath the silence, a storm was coming. The chair may be empty, but the man who sat in it is wide awake. Greed has a sound. It leaks out in whispers, in phone calls, in voices that forget who's listening. The hardware store smelled like sawdust and fertilizer. I only came for a pack of screws, nothing more. But fate has a cruel way of staging its plays. I turned the corner near the paint aisle, and that's when I heard it. Mark's voice, too loud, too cocky. Yeah, once the trust clears, we'll finally get the cabin and the lake boat. He won't last much longer anyway. My chest tightened. He stood with his back to me, phone pressed against his ear, one hand gesturing like he was already showing off the boat. Yeah, he said again, 7.5 mil will be set for life. Emily's dad won't even know what hit him. My hands curled into fists at my sides. I stepped forward. Is that so? He froze, turned. His eyes widened just a fraction before narrowing into that smug grin he wore like cologne. Didn't see you there, Pops, he said, slipping the phone into his pocket. Out running errands. I kept my voice low. What did you mean by that? He shrugged, just talking about plans, future stuff. Future stuff that doesn't belong to you. His grin widened. Come on, don't play dumb. You set up the trust. Everyone knows how this works. It's ours eventually. It's mine until the day I die, I snapped. He leaned in, his voice dropping. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, old man. Why not let go gracefully? Move into a nice little retirement place. Let us enjoy what you've been hoarding. Hoarding? That word hit me harder than his smirk. 40 years of labor, sweat, broken bones, and missed holidays, and he called it hoarding. I took a step closer. You think you've won, Mark, but you don't know a damn thing about me. His smirk flickered for half a second, then he patted my shoulder like I was a child. We'll see. He walked off, whistling, as if he hadn't just declared war. That night I didn't turn on the television. I didn't even finish dinner. I went straight to the cabinet, pulled out the fireproof safe, and laid its contents across the kitchen table. Deeds, contracts, insurance papers, statements. And then tucked between files I found it, my wife's notes. She always scribbled on the margins of legal papers, reminders to herself. Her handwriting was small, careful. One line stopped me cold. Always keep a backup plan. They won't thank you, but life will test you. I ran my fingers over the faded ink, hearing her voice in my head. She said those words after Emily's wedding, when the bills piled high and Mark conveniently forgot his contribution. She warned me then, trust but verify. Mark thought I was some senile fool, blind to the game being played around me. But my wife knew better. She prepared me. I spent hours combing through every page, each clause, each condition. The more I read, the clearer it became. They believed the trust was locked, that they just had to wait me out. But the power was still in my hands, and I wasn't about to die quietly. When a man shows you his greed, believe him. And when he laughs in your face, remember to laugh last. By midnight, the papers were back in the safe, stacked neatly, ready for the fight ahead. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen, staring at the table where those documents lay hidden. It wasn't just paper, it was my life's work, my wife's voice, my blood and time. And no smug son-in-law was going to steal it from me. Mark thought I was hoarding money. What I was really hoarding was ammunition, and I just loaded the first round. They thought I was finished. What they forgot is, I still had a pen in my hand. Greg's truck idled in front of Hannah's law office, an old converted brownstone with ivy crawling up its sides. She's the sharpest mind I know, he said, sipping from his thermos. You sure about this? I looked down at the folder in my lap. The trust documents, bank records, and my wife's handwritten notes all stacked neatly. I've never been more sure, I said and stepped out. Hannah looked just like her mother, sharp jaw, eyes that cut through nonsense. Her handshake was firm but not performative. You've got the floor, Mr. Whitman, she said, motioning for me to sit across from her desk. I handed her the folder. This is everything, I said. The trust, amendments, bank logs. I need to know exactly what they can and can't do. She opened the folder without a word. The room was silent except for the sound of pages flipping. 10 minutes passed, then 15. I didn't rush her. Finally she looked up. They think this is theirs. I nodded. She gave a dry chuckle. They're wrong. She pulled a pen from behind her ear. Clause 14C revocable until death. That means full control, investment, distribution, beneficiary change still rests with you. They can't touch it without your signature. I exhaled, but it wasn't relief. It was restraint giving way to resolve. You can rewrite the story any way you like, she said. I met her eyes. Good, because my daughter thinks she screamed me out of her house. What she really did was scream away her future. Hannah leaned forward. Walk me through what you want. I want it out of her hands, out of his too. Mark's a leech. I want the trust redirected somewhere that honors what I built with my wife. Do you have someone in mind? I hesitated. A face flashed in my memory, an old friend of my wife's, a woman named Margaret who ran a transitional home for elderly veterans. I remembered how my wife once said, if we ever come into real money, I'd give her enough to expand. I nodded slowly. Yes, Margaret's foundation. She helps veterans with no families. It's what my wife would have wanted. Hannah clicked her pen. Then we'll start there. The amendment process wasn't flashy. No dramatic signatures. No courtroom drama. Just black ink on paper and language crafted with surgical precision. Do you want to notify them? Hannah asked. I shook my head. Not yet. Let them dream a little longer. She smiled. You're dangerous when you're quiet. After the documents were drafted, notarized, and secured, I left the office lighter. Greg waited by his truck, arms crossed. That look on your face, I haven't seen that since we came home from the Gulf. I chuckled. Feels like a different kind of war. Maybe, but I like your odds. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the fireplace mantel where my wife's portrait still stood. I know what you'd say, I whispered. You told me not to let love make me blind. And I had been blind for years. I let birthdays replace honesty. I let silence replace accountability. I told myself they loved me, even when they used me. But not anymore. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. The trust was never just about money. It was about memory, legacy, and I'd be damned if I let that legacy rot in the hands of the ungrateful. The kitchen was still, the only sound the hum of the fridge and the tick of the clock. For the first time in months, I felt something I thought I'd lost control. Not of them, not of the outcome, but of myself. She screamed, "Get out," so I did, and I took the future with me when I left. Sometimes the dead speak louder than the living, and when they do, you listen. I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Every creak of the floorboard, every gust of wind through the chimney felt louder than it should have. But it wasn't the house keeping me up. It was her. That look Emily gave me, like I was a ghost at my own table. I rose from my bed, slipped on my slippers, and walked to the attic. The air was dust-thick and cold. I reached behind an old trunk and pulled out the fireproof tin box I hadn't opened in years. Inside were the things I never had the heart to throw away: Margaret's letters, medals, faded photos, and the cassette tapes. My wife had recorded them during her final year, one tape for every season. Her voice a time capsule, her strength locked in magnetic film. I brought the box downstairs, slid the first tape into the old player, pressed play. Click whir. Hey, honey, her voice crackled. If you're listening to this, it means I'm probably sitting across from you in spirit. I closed my eyes. She laughed gently on the tape. Don't roll your eyes. I know how you get. I made these because I knew you'd need me after I was gone. You always pretended to be the strong one, but between us, you were the one who cried during commercials. I chuckled, the sound catching in my throat. She continued, her voice quieter now. Listen to me, okay? I know how Emily is. I know how she looks through you sometimes, like she didn't come from our hands, our sacrifice. I know Mark is worse. He's charming until there's something to gain. I saw it, even when you didn't want to. My eyes stung. Don't let them erase you, baby. Don't let what we built together get swallowed by greed. That trust wasn't just money. It was the bricks of our life, stacked with every overnight shift you pulled, every dinner I skipped so we could pay the plumber, every time we chose each other over comfort. There was a pause on the tape, then a sound like she was holding back tears. You gave your body, your mind, your pride to build that life. And if they try to take it like you don't matter anymore, don't you dare let them. My jaw clenched. I'm not there to yell, so you have to yell for me. Click. Silence. I rewound it, played it again, and again, and again. By the third listen, I wasn't crying anymore. I was breathing steady, focused. Around 4 a.m., I made coffee, black, the way she used to brew it before dawn. I sat at the table with her tape player still running softly beside me. I didn't turn on any lights. I didn't need to. I ran my finger along the grain of the wooden table. We had picked this out together, 42 years ago, at a thrift market. The stain was still chipped where Emily had carved a doodle with a fork when she was 6. Back when she called me daddy and waited by the door when I came home from shifts. Before the entitlement set in, before the forgetting. I wasn't mourning a loss anymore. I was preparing for a defense, one she gave me permission to lead. By sunrise, I had made a decision. I took the trust file off the counter and slid in a copy of her voice tape. If this ever went legal, and I suspected it would, let them hear her words. Let them hear a woman they'd turned into an afterthought. Later that morning, I stepped onto the porch. Cold air hit my face, but it didn't bother me. Across the street, Greg was loading bags of mulch into his pickup. He saw me and raised an eyebrow. You sleep? Nope, I said, but I found my voice. She told me not to let them erase me, and I won't. Some wounds don't bleed, they echo. I stood in front of the refrigerator for a long time, a yellow legal pad in my hand, pens shaking between my fingers. Get out. I wrote it down, all caps, sharp letters. Then, you ruin every holiday. You're just a grumpy old man who can't move on. Go back to your lonely little house. We don't need your drama. Each sentence, its own punch to the gut. I pinned the sheet to the fridge door with a rusted magnet that once held up Emily's kindergarten drawings. Now it held evidence. Not for court, not yet, for me. The clock ticked in the corner. I made black coffee, no sugar, no cream, just bitter. Each sip burned, I liked that. Then came the sound of tires on gravel. Greg. He didn't knock, just walked in like always, carrying a six-pack of whatever was on sale and a grocery bag with 2 deli sandwiches. You look like hell, he said. I've been busy. He glanced at the fridge. What's that? The script, I muttered, from Thanksgiving. He walked closer, read the words, then let out a low whistle. She really said all that. I nodded. And you just stood there. My jaw tightened. I didn't want to blow up in front of the grandkids. Greg didn't say anything for a minute, just handed me a sandwich and cracked open a beer. At 11 a.m. We sat in silence chewing. Finally, I said, I've got Hannah drafting the First Amendment. Greg raised an eyebrow. You serious? Filed tonight. The trust isn't locked until I'm gone, so I'm rewriting the story while I'm still here. He leaned back in the chair, grunted. You want revenge or justice? He asked. I stared at the fridge, both. He chuckled. That's the most honest thing you've said in months. After he left, I sat down with my wife's old fountain pen. I pulled out another sheet and wrote the names of everyone listed as beneficiaries in the trust, Emily, Mark, each of the grandkids. Then I drew a line through Emily's name, a clean, hard slash. And Mark. I paused at the kids' names. My hand hovered, shook a little. But then I remembered them laughing when she screamed at me, watching me pack my coat from the hallway like I was the problem. I crossed them out too. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about erasure. They erased me from the family, from the table, from the house I helped them buy when Emily said they couldn't afford the down payment. The sun dipped low. I lit a single lamp in the corner. The quiet made the walls feel closer, but not in a crushing way, in a focused way. Like a courtroom just before the verdict. I sat down with my old phone and played Margaret's tape one more time. "Don't let them erase you," she'd said. She didn't mean just in the heart. She meant in the will, the paper, the legacy. Around 9 p.m., Hannah texted me. "All done, amendments submitted. They're no longer listed. Want to review it tomorrow." I replied, "Yes, thank you." Then I stared at the message. So simple, just words. But those words shifted the ground beneath Emily's future. They thought I'd fade. Instead, I became ink on a new page. I took the Thanksgiving script off the fridge, folded it, slid it into the safe. Evidence no longer. Now it was a relic. The act of remembering had done its job. Now came the act of rewriting. The first move had been made, and they didn't even know they were playing. Sometimes the enemy of your enemy isn't just an ally, he's a mirror. The parking lot behind Ethan's apartment complex hadn't changed much since the last time I was here. Cracked pavement, one flickering streetlight, and the faint smell of takeout in the air. I hesitated at his door. My hand hovered over the buzzer. Then I pressed it. "Yeah," came his voice through the intercom, gruff, tired. "It's me, Emily's father-in-law or ex-father-in-law." A pause, then the door buzzed. He opened it halfway, leaner than I remembered, same tired eyes though. "Didn't think I'd ever see you again," he muttered. "I need 10 minutes." He stepped aside. The apartment was modest, couch with one armrest duct-taped, a coffee table with ring stains, football game muted on the TV, and 2 boxes of instant noodles on the counter. "Beer?" he asked. "Only if it's cold." He handed me one. We sat. "I'm guessing this ain't a social call," he said. I took a breath. Thanksgiving. Emily screamed at me in front of the whole family, told me to get out. He didn't flinch. "Figures. She's counting on a trust fund I built. $7.5 million. She thinks it's guaranteed." Now he laughed short, bitter. "That's rich, pun intended. She once told me I was the dumbest investment she ever made." I nodded slowly. "She drained your savings, didn't she?" "Every damn cent. Cleaned the joint account while I was at work. Said I was too soft to fight back. And she was right back then." I looked at him, really looked. And I saw it. The same hollow ache I'd carried in my chest for weeks. "I'm rewriting the trust," I said. His eyebrows lifted. "I'm cutting her out entirely." A long silence stretched between us. "You know," he finally said, "when we first met I thought she was the best thing that ever happened to me. Smart, ambitious, said she wanted to build a life, a family." He took another sip. "Turns out she just wanted a mirror, someone to admire her while she did all the breaking." I nodded. "She's still breaking things." "Then break the cycle." I reached into my coat pocket and handed him a folded sheet. He unfolded it, read silently, the amendment paperwork, Hannah's draft. "I'm naming new beneficiaries," I said. "People who deserve it, people who still know what integrity looks like." He blinked, confused. "I'm not asking for anything," I added. "Just your truth, your story, your perspective." He stared at the paper for a long moment. "She always said you were too sentimental," he muttered. "But I think you just wanted to believe the best in people. Didn't we all?" He leaned back. Well, if you're looking for witnesses to her greed, I've got emails, screenshots, voicemails. Hell, even a few threats she texted me during the divorce. I raised an eyebrow. Would you share them? He nodded with pleasure. Before I left, he walked me to the door. I'm not saying I'm healed, he said, but hearing what she did to you, it helps. I thought I was the only one she gutted. I placed a hand on his shoulder. Sometimes the deepest scars are the ones family carves. He gave me a tired smile. Well, I'm glad someone, finally holding her accountable. Back in the car, I sat with the engine off, just breathing. Ethan may not be blood, but tonight he reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten. The state clerk must have laughed when they read it. The letter I received from the county office was short. No legal standing, no further action. Melanie went one step further, filed for elder fraud. Accused me of mental instability, manipulation, and deliberately sabotaging their financial future. That last part made Greg choke on his coffee. You ready for mediation? Hannah asked, her tone cool and clipped as ever. I straightened my tie. Been ready since they called me a burden. She smiled, then let's end it. The mediation room smelled like cheap carpet and peppermint mints. Melanie arrived first, overdressed, overconfident. David trailed behind her, lips tight, eyes down. I waited until the last possible second to enter. Same navy blue suit I wore to their wedding, polished shoes, wore medals still pinned because why the hell not? Melanie's eyes narrowed the second she saw me. Nice costume, she sneered. I buttoned my jacket, fitting for a performance. Hannah started slow, calm, precise. Presented the notarized POA revocation, the amended deed, and Kyle's signed purchase documents. Everything watertight. Melanie fidgeted. David's leg bounced like a nervous child's. You tricked him, Melanie snapped. Hannah tilted her head. Do you have any evidence of coercion, Mrs. Halpern? Melanie opened her mouth, then shut it. David finally spoke. He never even told us what he was planning. That's not fair. I leaned forward. You never asked. You just decided I didn't count anymore. They didn't want a conversation. They wanted silence and surrender. Melanie slammed her palms on the table. You're a vindictive old man. The room went quiet. I turned to the mediator, then back to her. No, I said calmly, just a man tired of being erased. The silence that followed was different, heavier, a silence that agreed with me. Even the mediator blinked like he'd been slapped awake. 2 weeks later, we stood before a judge. Melanie wore black like it was a funeral. David didn't even look up from his hands. Hannah was all business. The judge asked for final remarks. Melanie sniffed, stood, and repeated the phrase, elder abuse, deception, punitive action. The judge turned to me. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Keller? I stood slowly. My wife and I built that home from nothing, brick by brick. I trusted my son with my legacy. He trusted someone else to erase me. I didn't fight out of spite. I fought to matter. The judge nodded, slow and sure. Case dismissed, he said. No damages, no fraud, and no further proceedings. Melanie gasped. David said nothing. A suit doesn't make a man respectable, but the way he wears it can remind people who they tried to forget. Outside, the sky was clean. No wind, no noise. Just the echo of a gavel still ringing in their ears. Justice doesn't raise its voice. It just walks out the door unshaken. When the truth finally crawls into the sunlight, it doesn't whisper. It rings. I didn't send the story to the press. I didn't have to. Public records told their own tale, property sale, deed transfers, court dismissal. The trail was plain. All it took was one bored reporter digging through weekly filings. And just like that, the headline ran on the second page of the county weekly. Veteran outsmarts son in $3 million property flip. They used a photo of the house, with the sold sign still fresh in the lawn. Kyle must have handed it over. He loved the spotlight. I hated it. Want a copy? Greg asked, waving the paper at me as I walked into the VFW. I shook my head, let it burn out. No way, he laughed. This is better than a trophy. Next day, I found it taped to the inside of his garage, right above the old American flag he flew every Memorial Day. He wrote a single word in Sharpie underneath the headline, Legend. They buried me in silence. The world dug me out with noise. First came the whispers at the post office. You're the man from the paper, right? Then at church. Brother Keller, I saw what they tried to pull. You handled it with grace. And finally, the most uncomfortable moment. Betty Simmons from the Altar Guild leaned in during Potluck Sunday and said, If you ever want to tell your story, my niece works at Channel 8. I laughed softly. I've said enough already. Melanie's humiliation arrived louder. She lost a listing contract the next week. A high-profile seller pulled out. Bad press, he apparently told her. Takes years to build trust, but only one headline to lose it. David fared no better. I heard through Greg that his poker buddies stopped returning texts. A couple guys at his old law firm unfollowed him on LinkedIn. Reputation is like glass. It only takes one drop for the cracks to show. I saw them once that week, at the grocery store. Melanie avoided eye contact. David spotted me by the bread aisle and walked the other way. He didn't even fake a smile. Just clutched the shopping cart like it was holding his pride together. Greg came over that evening, balancing a six-pack and a smug grin. You see the new edit? He asked, pointing to the garage. Under Legend, he'd taped a second article. Real estate agent under fire for misleading listing claims. Melanie's name was bold in the first paragraph. I took a long pull from the beer and stared at the paper. I didn't want it to be like this, I muttered. Greg leaned against the workbench. I know. But I didn't start it either. No, he nodded, you just finished it. It wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration, and dignity wears quiet better than shame. The house sat peacefully now. Kyle hadn't moved in yet, but he kept the lawn trimmed. Mail came on time. The porch light still flickered every night around 8. But something about it had shifted. It didn't feel stolen anymore. It didn't feel haunted either. It just felt settled. Sometimes justice doesn't roar, it just gets published. Some bridges don't collapse in fire, they dissolve in silence. He came at dusk. Always at dusk, like shame can't stand daylight. I was in the kitchen, steeping tea when the knock came, hesitant, 2 short taps, then stillness. I didn't rush, let him stand there. When I opened the door, I didn't step out, just pulled the screen tight and leaned against the frame. David looked like he hadn't slept in days. His tie was loose, his knuckles scraped. His face, the same face I once cradled after a little league loss, was cracked with some new kind of defeat. Dad, he said, can we talk? Apologies aren't keys. Some doors don't open again. I didn't invite him in. He didn't ask. I've been thinking about everything, he said, glancing past me like the house still belonged to him. We didn't mean for it to go that far. My stare didn't waver. We, I said. He hesitated. Me, I mean me too. I just thought after Mom died and things got tight. I raised a hand. You thought I wouldn't notice. No, he said quickly. I thought you wouldn't fight back. That landed harder than he realized. He dropped his eyes. I said nothing. The silence stretched. Only the porch light buzzed above us. You gotta understand, he finally said. Melanie, she pushed. She had plans. I went along with it because it felt easier than fighting. I watched his jaw twitch. That's the problem, David, I said. You spent your whole life going along with things. He blinked hard. You think this is easy for me? No, I said. I think it's too late. He leaned in, gripping the screen like he was trying to tear through years of betrayal. I missed the way things were. I looked at him, really looked. The way things were never should have included treating your father like inventory. He winced. I opened the screen just a crack, just enough to pass something through. A photo of him at 13, standing beside me with the birdhouse we built, smiling like his world had structure. He stared at it. I don't remember this, he murmured. I do, I said, because it was the last time you built something instead of tearing it down. His shoulders sagged. Please, he whispered, just don't shut me out. I reached forward slowly, closed the screen door. The latch clicked. I didn't slam it, didn't yell, didn't cry, just locked it, calm and final. Forgiveness is a door with no handle on the outside. He stood there a moment longer, then turned, walked down the porch steps and into the dusk. No car waited, no wife beside him. Just the long walk of a man who burned the map and expected to still be welcomed home. Inside, I sat back at the kitchen table. Steam curled from my tea. And in the stillness, I felt nothing. Not rage. Not sorrow. Just the weight of clarity. That door didn't close out of anger. It closed because peace doesn't share a room with betrayal. Some men see a house. Others see the bones, the soul, the echo of a life lived. Kyle's text came mid-morning. Swing by, place is almost done. I hesitated. It had been weeks since the sale. I hadn't set foot inside since. The thought of walking through what once was mine, now brushed in someone else's color, made my stomach stir. Still, I owed it to myself to see. He greeted me at the door with a paint-splattered shirt and a grin. Thought you might want a peek before I stage it. Stage it? I raised an eyebrow. He smirked. Changed my mind, not selling, I'm moving in. I blinked, really. Kyle nodded. Place has good bones and better stories. We stepped inside. The scent of fresh paint lingered in the air. Clean, sharp, layered over memories like a new coat on an old scar. New hardwood floors stretched across the living room, gleaming under soft lighting. The walls, once faded beige, were now a warm charcoal gray. It looked different, modern, lighter. But not cold. Did a lot of the work myself, Kyle said, wiping his hands on a rag. Could have flipped it, easy profit, but I dunno, the place stuck with me. I didn't speak, just took slow steps. The dining room table was gone, replaced by a smaller, sleeker piece. But the window, the one where my wife used to sit with her tea every morning, was still there, catching the same morning sun. You didn't gut it, I murmured. Kyle shook his head. Didn't need to, this place doesn't need to be erased, just honored. He walked over to the fireplace. Above it, still hanging from the same brass hook, was the old wooden plaque. Hand carved, cracked slightly at the edges, and still bearing the same verse. Be still and know that I am God. My chest tightened. She chose that after her diagnosis, I whispered. Kyle turned to me, didn't know that. I offered to take it down when she got worse, said it was cruel. She said no, said it was for me, not her. He nodded. I dusted around it, couldn't bring myself to take it down. I swallowed hard. For all the slick suits and confident talk, Kyle had done something David never did. He listened. You ever think they knew what they were trying to destroy? He asked, keeping his voice soft. No, I said. I don't think they cared enough to find out. We walked into the garage next. Empty now but organized, tool racks, fresh paint. The oil stain from David's teenage Mustang was finally gone. You want to leave anything behind? Kyle asked. I shook my head. Already took the memories, don't need the clutter. He chuckled, fair enough. Back in the hallway, he paused near the coat closet. I found this behind the shelf, he said, handing me a small metal box. I opened it. Inside, my wife's locket, a dried rose from our 40th anniversary, and a folded photo of David as a boy, sitting on my shoulders. I forgot this existed, I whispered, tracing the locket. She kept it safe, Kyle said, so I figured I should too. I looked at him. You're not who I thought you were, I said. He smirked, neither are you, I guess. We stood there in silence, two men bound not by blood but by respect. One who bought a house, one who reclaimed a legacy. It's not who owns the deed, it's who protects the roots. I stepped outside, the sunlight sharp but welcome. Kyle locked the door behind us, not possessively, just carefully. A stranger kept my wife's verse on the wall. That told me everything I needed to know about who deserved the keys. Some people only notice what they've lost when no one's left to listen. The voicemail came at 2:14 a.m. I was awake. I'd been sitting in the den, lamp on, book untouched, sipping lukewarm coffee. That old habit of waking before dawn, a remnant of my army days, never left me. Neither did the feeling that something always went wrong in the dark. The phone buzzed. I glanced down. Melanie. Against better judgment, I pressed play. Her voice was jagged, more gasps than sentences. You ruined everything. We were going to build, we had plans. How could you do this to us? A loud crash, something breaking on her end. Then a sob. You're a bitter old man, vindictive. Everyone's going to know what you did. Click. I stared at the screen for a long while, thumb hovering over save. I pressed delete instead. The next day, Greg showed up holding his phone, grinning like a schoolboy. Seen her Facebook lately? I raised a brow. She's gone full Shakespeare in meltdown mode, tragedy and betrayal and crocodile tears. I pulled out my tablet. Sure enough, Melanie had posted a string of rants. When people you trust stab you in the back, the scar lasts forever. Not all fathers are good men. We gave up everything for him, and he repaid us with betrayal. Every post followed by crying emojis, angry faces, but no comments. No likes, just digital silence. One old friend replied once, Mel, did y'all try to sell the house behind his back? That was it. After that, nothing. Over the next week, I noticed the rest unravel. Melanie's real estate profile quietly disappeared from the agency's website. Her name vanished from listings. A quiet removal, the kind meant to avoid bad press. A neighbor told me she was seen at the pharmacy crying over a phone call. Another said she tried to get her hair done on credit. David. Still silent. He hadn't called since the day I locked the door in his face. He must have known by now that nothing was coming back. Not the house, not the money, not my trust. Greg sat across from me at the VFW one night, a beer in his hand. Think she ever gets it? He asked. I shook my head. Some people aren't sorry for what they did. They're sorry they didn't get away with it. That same night, I scrolled through her page again. She posted a grainy selfie from her car, mascara smudged, captioned, "The devil comes dressed as family." No one replied. The silence was louder than any insult. I leaned back in my chair, my eyes tracing the plaque still sitting on my desk, my wife's favorite verse Kyle had carefully preserved. Be still. That was the difference between Melanie and me. She raged. I waited. A few days later, I got another voicemail. Shorter this time. I hope you're proud, you humiliated us. I hope you rot alone. I didn't even flinch. I forwarded that one to Hannah. She'd handle the harassment filing if needed. No words from David. But sometimes silence is more honest than any apology. I passed Melanie once at the grocery store. She looked through me. Not past me, through. Like she couldn't believe I was real. Like I wasn't supposed to be standing upright, content, carrying my own damn groceries. She turned the cart sharply and disappeared down the aisle. As I left, the young clerk bagged my items and said, "Hey, that story about the house. Was that really you?" I nodded once. He grinned. "That was badass, sir. Some storms scream and throw glass, but the quiet ones, they're the ones that end legacies." Melanie screamed into the void, but no one echoed back. The world moved on, and so did I. Some homes live on. Others let you go when you're finally ready to stop bleeding into their walls. I didn't mean to stop. I was on my way to the market, same route I always take, but something pulled me, like muscle memory with a pulse. My hands turned the wheel before my mind gave them permission. There it was. My house. Or what used to be mine. Now it sat behind a white picket fence Kyle must have installed. The yard was green again. Someone had planted marigolds under the windows. I hadn't seen flowers on that patch since '03. I rolled to a quiet stop across the street, engine humming like a whisper. There were toys scattered on the front lawn. A plastic dinosaur, a red ball. A kid's laughter floated out from an open window, choppy and high, the kind of sound that makes you forget your age for a second. It looked alive. Greg's voice echoed in my memory. Sometimes, the best revenge is knowing they can't touch what you let go of. The curtains had changed, light blue now, not Melanie's stiff gray ones. The porch had wind chimes. My wife always wanted wind chimes. I sat there longer than I should have. No one noticed me. No one came out screaming. No ghosts in the windows. No bitterness hiding in the corners. It was just a house. And it was finally free. Later that afternoon, I parked outside the cemetery. It was quiet, October breeze, sky like linen, birds overhead not too loud. I walked the path I knew by heart, gravel crunching beneath my boots. Her headstone hadn't changed. Still clean, still simple, just how she wanted it. I knelt down, my knees creaking. "It's done, sweetheart," I whispered. "They tried to take it, but I didn't let them." My throat tightened. I stared at the soil. My fingers grazed the edge of the stone. "You would have liked the new owners. There's laughter now. Flowers, not tension, not greed." I sat there for a while, no rush, no noise. Just wind and bone-deep quiet. Back at the apartment, I opened the blinds. The place was smaller, sure, but it had sun in every room. My recliner faced a row of pine trees. The neighbor's dog barked twice a day, on schedule. No one knocked on my door unless they meant it. No expectations, no manipulation, no pretending. I pulled a photo from the desk drawer, me and my wife, standing in front of the old house before the roof was even finished. She had her hammer in hand, still wearing that yellow bandana she used to steal from my tool bench. I framed it and set it by the window. A reminder of who built that house and why. My phone buzzed once. A message from Greg. "You still alive, old man?" I texted back. "Barely, you still ugly." His reply was just a laughing emoji. That night I fixed myself a plate of roast and potatoes, turned on the old jazz station, and let the brass notes fill the apartment. I wasn't lonely. Just alone. There's a difference. I passed by the mirror on my way to bed. For a second I paused. I looked light. Like something had been peeled off, peeled away. Like grief had stopped sitting in my chest rent-free. I thought losing the house would mean losing her, but it wasn't the house. It was the history, and I protected it. What remains isn't brick or memory. It's peace, and no one's taking that from me again. After the storm, there's not silence, there's stillness, and if you've earned it, it sings. My new mailbox went up this morning. Simple brushed bronze, no frills. Just 5 letters etched clean across the front. My name. Not mine and Melanie's. Not David's add-on. Just mine. I stared at it for longer than I should have. There's something about seeing your name, undiluted, standing on its own, like carving it into stone, saying I was here. I mattered. I spent the morning in the yard, planted a rose bush just off the porch. It reminded me of her. My wife always said red roses were too loud, too proud. She loved the soft pink ones, the ones that bloomed quietly without begging for attention. I dug the soil with bare hands, felt every grain, felt alive. When I stepped back, sweat on my brow, dirt under my nails, I saw it. A little color against the world, a start. Inside, I made coffee the way I like it. No passive-aggressive low-sugar substitute. No complaints about too strong or too bitter. Just real hot coffee in a chipped mug, mine. I sat at the kitchen table with her letters again, the ones she wrote during her last year. Some were short, shopping lists turned soft with sentiment. Others were long, full of thoughts she never spoke aloud. Today, I read the one she wrote on our last anniversary. If they ever try to erase you, it said, remind them whose name built everything they're standing on. I smiled. The apartment isn't big, 1 bedroom, no stairs. But it's bright, breezy, clean. Every creak of the floorboard is mine. Every wall is honest. No walking on eggshells, no pretending. Greg came by around noon, carrying 2 cigars and a 6-pack. Figured you want a break in the porch, he said, patting the wooden rail like it was sacred. We sat under the awning, puffing like old sinners. You did it, man, he said. Clean, no yelling, no lawsuits dragging on, just checkmate. I shrugged, didn't feel like victory, just necessity. He nodded, sometimes they're the same. Hannah dropped by 2 days later with a gift basket. From the firm, she said, and from me, you're a good man, Mr. Ellis, you deserve to win. Thank you, I said. And you made my father very proud, she added, smiling. That one hit deep. I didn't say anything, just nodded. Kyle sent a Christmas card. Inside was a photo of the old house, now fully renovated, decked with lights. In the bottom corner, in a child's handwriting, thank you for the home. I stared at that line until the ink blurred. I started cooking again, not fancy, just hearty meals. Stew, pot roast, my wife's cornbread recipe. I almost forgot the extra honey drizzle she always added. Now I don't. The noise is gone now. No phone buzzing with demands. No backhanded favors disguised as concern. No guilt dressed in family ties. Just birds in the morning, the occasional car in the distance, wind through the trees, my own breath. Sometimes I wake in the middle of the night, not from nightmares but from habit, years of being needed, doubted, dismissed. But now the darkness doesn't accuse me. It wraps around me like a warm coat, whispers, you're safe, it's over. Peace doesn't knock. You build the door, you write your name on it, and you wait. And one day it walks in and sits beside you. The rose bush bloomed this morning. Soft pink, quiet. Just like she liked. I sip my coffee, glance at my name on the mailbox, and smile. I'm not just home, I'm free.